Welcome to Breaking on the Daily number 4, where today we start with debates. It's happening tonight, and I'm planning on streaming it, kind of. I'm planning on streaming gameplay. I'm going to play some Spelunky 2, maybe some Rivals of Aether later tonight, but I'm going to be listening along with the debate and responding to it and whatnot, though I won't be playing the debate on the stream, just to be clear. But to go on to our first story, which has to do with the debate, Kristen Walker, the debate moderator for tonight, has a very, very, very long track record of being anti-Trump and very, very much pro-Biden. There are many, many examples, but one of my favorite ones was when Jim Acosta endorsed her, essentially, as being a good journalist, which it might as well be an anti-endorsement at that point. Along with that, she also commonly perpetrated the Russia hoax and all those sorts of things. If things like back when impeachment was going on, she was talking about how there was no evidence that Biden did anything wrong. By the way, at a time when we now know that the Trump administration had access to these documents, which, by the way, on the the Hunter Biden emails that we're talking about, which, by the way, on this front, it seems to me that the reason we didn't see this back then at the time when impeachment was going on, when it would have cleared Trump instantaneously and absolutely decimated Biden's campaign before it even really got started, is because I think that that it was a strategic move, essentially, that Trump didn't want to play all of his cards right out of the gate, and this was probably his greatest card he had. I mean, Rudy Giuliani probably already had it by this point, and so did we know the FBI had it by this point. So I think there is a more than likely chance that this was all politically designed, waiting until this moment. It just is looking more and more like that, and I think there's no other real explanation why he wouldn't release it at the time. So I think that's really the reason why he wasn't releasing it. And, this, to get back on topic, this debate moderator is going to be awful. Very, very much awful. Awful. Hold on. I might have to... But anyway, on to our next story. From the Wall Street Journal, top universities have taken billions in unreported foreign funds. The U.S. Department of Education has found. This is completely ridiculous. You have universities like Cornell, MIT, taking millions and millions of dollars, either directly from the Chinese government, Cornell taking stuff from Qatar, if I remember correctly. Let me go down to where it is. Yeah, I think Qatar, and MIT's taking money from Huawei and doing things with artificial intelligence with them. There are many universities that are taking money directly from the Communist Party of China. $2 million. Georgetown took $2 million from the Chinese Communist Party directly. This is a big story. A lot of stories you see end up getting shuffled into the background, and this is going to be one of those stories, I imagine. But this is something you need to watch, especially if you're planning, if you have kids already and you're planning on sending them out to colleges, or you're, around my age, thinking about going out to college. Then you really need to pay attention to these things, because if you're going to a university that is taking Chinese money, what are you getting there? You have to ask yourself at that point, are you getting Chinese propaganda in that university? And I think it's fairly likely that you are. Or at least you're not getting, the bad parts of China at the very least. So, this is something that everyone really needs to look at. Because there are a lot of these... The thing is, these universities weren't directly named in the documents, but they were able to be identified by... through other means. It's from the Wall Street Journal, a pretty reliable source when it comes to these sorts of things. But anyway, on to our next story, where Brian Stelter explodes on a journalist for pointing out how terrible he was on the Mueller probe. So, he was talking with one of these Susan Ferracino, some kind of French or Italian name, I don't know, who was talking about media ethics and how they needed to report on the Biden story, and Brian Stelter shot back about how, well, that was last week. That's last news cycle. It's old news. Which, what? It came out a week ago, guys. I mean, I get you're playing by the Clinton handbook, and that's been your, tour de force for the past, 30 years. But, come on. You're not even doing it right. The Clintons denied for months until they actually started saying, it's old news. But this, they didn't even wait. They wait a week. This was I think a Wednesday thing. So yeah, they waited a literal week, and then it's old news. It's old news. We haven't even covered it. Old news. It continues to have updates like every single day. Every single day, I have to friggin' put it in my tags every single day. But no, old news. Yeah. And on to the next story, another media malfeasance story from CNN. Chris Cuomo apparently was threatened with a fine from his apartment building because he refused to wear a mask. Now, people are obviously going to jump to the double standard, this is a double standard thing, and I think that's a legitimate critique. The hypocrisy of the mask standard is pretty ridiculous. But something I want to keep in mind is that saying something is a hypocritical standard or a double standard is not itself evidence against a standard or something, it's not evidence against a standard on its own. Reason being that you could make that argument against any standard that isn't no standard. Name any single standard that you could have that isn't, somehow nihilism, that isn't no standard at all, and you're going to find people who don't live up to that standard even if they do purport to actually hold it. That applies to literally every standard in the book. And so you need to be wary of making the argument, it's a hypocritical standard, so I don't want to hold it. It's not dispositive, at least. If it's rampant and all over the place, like it is with masks, where it seems to be only for the camera, even with people who agree with it, then it's worth at least looking into at that point. It could be a reason to be skeptical, but it's not itself proof that the standard is bad. That's something I want to keep in mind, because there are lots, every single standard is that way. That's just something to keep in mind. But this is ridiculous. I mean, you are perfectly justified in criticizing people who are hypocritical about a standard which they hold, whether you hold that standard or not. You just need to be clear whether you hold it or not, And it can't be a reason why you don't hold it, in my opinion. Or at least not legitimately. But anyway, on to our next standard. Biden will be making a commission on a judicial review, saying his options go well beyond court backing. Now, I'm actually kind of interested in how this works, because I am very much in favor of court reform, though I imagine this will end up being Biden attempting to institute court activism from the top down, essentially. I imagine what this would end up doing if I were to just predict things, just predict what's going to happen with regard to this court. I imagine what it's going to do is it's going to essentially review judges and then promote them for impeachment, I guess. That would be the most likely other option other than court backing that I could possibly see. Maybe we'll have like a stupid friggin' bipartisan meter or whatever. We'll see. I mean, there's going to be a lot of stupid crap if this gets put into place. But I'm going to be completely honest. I think the best thing that could come out of a Biden presidency is actually court packing. Not because of its direct results, but because of what would happen in regards to that after the fact. Because first of all, it's going to be such an electoral ream job in the next midterm and election that it would make 84 blush. Okay, we're talking 49 state landslide. We're talking 50 state landslide, man. We're talking crazy amounts of Senate seats. We're talking 70, 80 seat majorities. We're talking 300 seat Congress majorities at the minimum, in my opinion. I mean, it would be crazy. It would be absolutely insane if they actually tried to pack the court. And what it would do in the aftermath, in my opinion, is it would justify literally anything that the Republicans tried to do to the court. Now, of course, there's always the fear that the Republicans will do their classic get a mile, take an inch type deal, where they're given huge mandates, 70, 80 seat majorities, but only do like more court packing or only impeach the judges that were put on by the people beforehand, when that's not what you're really given a mandate to do at that point. I mean, at that point, I think you'd be able to impeach literally any judge you want and mold the court completely to your liking. I mean, it would justify not only impeaching the people who were put on through court packing, I think it would justify impeaching people like Steyer, or Sotomayor, or Breyer, or Kagan, and even definitely Roberts. I mean, I think Roberts should be impeached already, as I think I've already made my position on that clear. And this is something I'm really fired up about. The court in general. I think the Republicans should still impeach people, just because I think more judges should be impeached. I mean, if you read the Federalist Papers, that is one of the major checks against the court, that being impeachment. It's one of the only checks against the court, but it's a very effective one. It needs to be used more often, and really the court needs to stop being some sort of monolithic, superpowered, enlightened group in the minds of the American people. It really just needs to stop being that. And on to our next story. Oh no, Iran and Russia are trying to interfere in the U.S. elections. I think this is from the New York Post. I think it was the Director of National Intelligence came out, John Radcliffe, and the FBI Director said that they were, essentially doing spoof emails. And one of these spoof emails coming from Iran was the Iranians pretending to be Proud Boys, essentially, and trying to intimidate voters, I should have put that script. They were trying to intimidate voters. They were talking about, you need to do this, or we're going to come after you, or whatever. And funny thing about that, right after the Lincoln Project, before this came out, just a few hours before this came out, the Lincoln Project helped this spoof campaign go viral by promoting Iranian disinformation about the Proud Boys. Oh my gosh, the Lincoln Project are a bunch of frickin' clowns. They're just clowns, man. I mean, it is ridiculous. And these people are not, what you'll notice is that these people are not prominent Republicans. They're like old staffers who got fired for being worthless, essentially. And they're anti-Trump, but they're just so ineffectual, and they're essentially Democrats, most of them. They are rhinos, all of them. All of them are rhinos. And it's just, man, Lincoln Project is just a mess. And on top of that, they're grifters. They're getting a lot of money from the resistance types that are, a lot of it's going into expenses, and salaries and such like that. So, just more and more evidence that the Lincoln Project, you shouldn't trust the Lincoln Project. You should, absolutely despise the Lincoln Project, as I do, as most reasonable people do. And I think that's an appropriate place to leave us off. I'm Kel Kidman. This is Breaking on the Daily. I'm out.